So, so okay, sent her off. She wrote me a vlog. She said, "Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go." She arrived there, found this Monica, who herself had she had revealed her location by talking to Sylvia. So she had also just been stabbed, and she was lying on the floor. It wasn't all murder, but there was quite a lot of murder. So she was lying on the floor, and she managed to, of course, gasp out her last words to Sylvia to tell her the next clue. But then I thought, well, I know what Sylvia would do, having had this terrible experience and then going to find this woman, and the woman's just kind of lying on the floor dying. So I had Sylvia write a blog post where she says, "Well, I did what you asked me, this is the information that she's given you. Now all I want is to be with my darling Pietro again. This life has no more meaning for me. You know, the world is useless without him. I don't want to live any longer. I just want to be gone." And then I sat and I waited to see what the players would do. And I thought, because I had decided in my own mind, right, you sent her, on your heads be it. This is what's going to happen. And I thought, if they get in contact with someone and say, "Send an ambulance, go and rescue her, something terrible's happening," then she would be saved, and if not, then she would die. And I remember it was a Friday afternoon. I was just sitting in front of my computer, watching them on the forums, discussing this new clue that Sylvia had just given them. And I remember sitting there going, "Come on, you bastards! You total bastards! You're going to let this woman die, this fictional woman, of course." And yet, for me, it was very, very real at that moment, because I was the one being told the story and not them, which was a very fascinating moment for me. And I was waiting to see if this poor woman was going to end up killing herself. And actually, after about 10 minutes of conversation, one of them said, "Oh, do you think we should do something about Sylvia?" And yes. They emailed Violet, and Violet charged over there and rescued her. And I just fudged it a bit because they had been a minute slow, but it was all right. That was more my experience of being told a story than it was theirs. And I'm actually not sure how much they knew whether or not that they would have that kind of impact. But to me, that's a sort of fascinating experience for me in terms of the real joy of collaborating with your audience. And I thought I would talk just briefly as well. At the end of Perplex, well, after it was all over, I haven't got a slide or anything for this. We had a lot of emails from people who were quite devastated that it was over, and actually quite a lot of people working on it were very devastated that it was over. It had become very real and very much a place that seemed, well, I mean, you can tell from the fact that we still kind of talk about the religion to each other. We still go, oh, they'll be starting their annual games this week. It still seems very real to a lot of us, and I think a lot of us would still like to go back and do more of it. We had a letter. We had a lot of letters from people saying they were very sad it was over. We had one letter that was very touching for me, from a young boy who was about 15, who said that before he discovered Perplex City, his close friend, had just committed suicide. It had been about 2 years before that. And he had moved to a new school. He felt himself very isolated and alone, and hadn't really managed to make friends at his new school. And then he found that his parents bought him some packs of these Perplex City cards because they knew that he was interested in puzzles. And he found the online forums for the game. And I mean, it's a game created by a bunch of geeks for a bunch of other geeks, right? It's a game about puzzles. It's a game where, we suggested this world in which the intellect was the most important thing, and you would be on the front page of a magazine if you had an enormously good brain. And it's a little fantasy world. But he said it was really amazing for him to be able to make friends with people on the forum. And the forums were very, very benign places, places where people who were, you know, teenagers up to people in their 70s, and actually we had a very good gender split, male-female. We're just talking about these puzzles and talking about this story. And that it gave him the confidence then to start to talk to people at his school, because he knew he had something to talk about. And that these adults, he had been interacting with adults online, and they treated him as peers. And that slowly he would show his friends or people at school his puzzle cards, and then they became his friends. And I mean, you know, for me, I hear people talking a lot about the internet is dividing people from one another, or computer games are depriving our children of social skills. And I think, actually, it's the most incredibly beautiful way for people to communicate. And to be communicating in some way, in a way which is almost, I hate to sound, I realise I'm something a bit moralistic about it, but something about it is a part of our best selves, I think. That what we want to present online, I mean, I know it's a lot of porn, but there's also something about that being able to tailor ourselves to say, well, this is who I want to be. And I think that's really lovely as well. So, yeah, I've always wanted, whenever I read a story that I really love, and there have been fictional worlds throughout my life that have been really important to me, I always wanted to be able to walk into those fictional worlds. You know, I always wanted to be able, I used to always check the back of wardrobes, because I want to go into Narnia, I want to go into Narnia. And I think what's really amazing to me now is that we can give people that experience, that actually we can create an online world and it is possible to allow them to put their hands through the computer screen and touch it. So, that's what I do.